Hi everyone, my name is Ellie and in today's video I'm going to be talking to you about how to get back into education after suffering an illness. Hello, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. So when I talk about illness, I don't mean that you've just been off school for a week with the common cold. When I say illness, I mean something significant where it's impacted your life and health so much that you've had to have a prolonged period time off of education. So the reason I'm doing this video is because this actually happened to me when I was 14 years old, when I was literally at the start of year 10, about to start my GCSEs. I was diagnosed with cancer. And consequently, I had to have 18 months of chemotherapy and radiotherapy. The first 7 months of treatment was really intense, so I wasn't even allowed to go to school because my immunity was so terrible that I would be able to just pick up so many different infections just from being in the school environment, so it was unsafe for me to even go. And then I was just so ill, so lethargic that I wasn't able to do any of the schoolwork anyway, so I pretty much wrote off that year 10. And when I went on to maintenance chemotherapy, which is a less harsh form of chemotherapy, I was able to go back into school but on a part-time basis. So I made the decision to actually repeat year 10 because I didn't want my illness to impact my grades, my GCSE grades. So I wanted to give myself that extra time and repeat the year that I missed. So in today's video, I essentially want to talk you through how you can get back into education and give you some of my tips and advice, because despite me missing a whole year of education, I was able to get back on it. I was able to get amazing GCSE grades. It was hard. It required a lot of motivation, discipline. So that's why in this video, I'm going to help you out. Let me just say well done if you're sitting here right now and you are going back into education after suffering an illness. It is a super daunting prospect, and a lot of people may have just used their illness as an excuse not to go back into education. So the fact that you are willing to go back into education and better yourself is really fantastic. So, just to even take that step is absolutely fantastic, because I know how daunting it can feel, because before I got cancer, I was a completely different person. I was quite popular, I was very sporty, but then I was kind of entering school again as a different Ellie. People knew me as the girl who got cancer, and no one knew how to talk to me anymore. I did feel like an outsider because people just avoided talking to me because they didn't know how to talk to me anymore, because I wasn't like the Ellie that they once knew. So it can be difficult because not everyone does, but most people, an illness does really change them. So going back into that social environment again can be really scary. So trying to deal with the social aspect is hard, but my biggest piece of advice for that is when you are put back into that, social environment in education, just talk to people, make yourself comfortable with people, make them comfortable with you. Because if you're just approaching conversations with them and talking about normal stuff, then they'll realize that your illness doesn't define you. You are still a normal person who can engage in normal conversations. So then that will kind of break down those barriers and people will be a lot more comfortable with you as a result. So now we're going to move on to the formal advice. So my first piece of advice is to go back into your education at your own pace and don't let anyone dictate this pace. So, if you have had an illness and then the new academic year is literally about to start, so that would seem like the right time to go back into education. But if you don't feel ready to, if you want some more time to kind of ease yourself back into education, then that's completely fine. And the people at your school, your university, wherever it may be, should definitely respect that, and if you need a longer transition period. So for example, when I finished the intensive chemotherapy, which was it was March of 2016, I didn't go straight back into normal lessons straight away. I had a tutor at home for a little while, which really helped kind of develop my confidence, because I had forgotten so much over that period of time where I wasn't doing any schoolwork. And then I eventually graduated to going back into school, but I was very lucky that my school has a support centre where people who have learning disabilities or learning difficulties go, and they can get one-on-one tuition. So then I got into the routine of going to school, but I was still not attending lessons because I didn't feel ready to do that. I was just having a one-on-one tutor. And then when the new academic year started, in the September, then I graduated to going back into lessons, and that was only on a part-time basis because I was still on chemotherapy, so I still got tired easily, so I either did like a morning or an afternoon at school, and that really worked for me. So remember that, you know, even if you finish treatment or whatever it may be, you're not expected to just go straight in to school or, you know, university again. You can kind of, you know, gradually kind of build up and let yourself transition back into education, because it would be a lot if, say, you miss school for a year, to like go straight back into it again. It would be really difficult. Another thing that's really worth considering if you've missed a really long period of school is actually repeating the school year. So of course I missed the whole of year 10, so I made the decision to repeat year 10, and that was like the best decision I ever made, because I knew that if I went into year 11 with all my peers, I would just stress myself out, because I had so much to catch up on, because I literally did no work during that whole year 10, and it would just be so stressful, and I would just make myself iller by doing that. It would be too much. So that's why I decided to repeat the school year, so that I could catch up with everyone else at the pace, you know, at a pretty slow pace and in a normal way. So, you know, it was hard, I guess, a social aspect, because I had to leave people behind, but in a sense I didn't really care too much, because I already had a year without seeing most people in my school year. They didn't really bother with me anymore, so the prospect of meeting new people didn't really faze me too much. Of course, you've got that aspect, an element of, oh, you are the sick kid, so people might, you know, find it hard to talk to you, but as I said before, as long as you talk to them, they'll become comfortable with you. And if you want me to do a in-depth video about repeating the school year, then please do let me know, as I'd be happy to do that. My second and probably most important tip is to have a good support network within your school or education environment. So I was super lucky that I have a really good relationship with my teachers. So I was very open and honest with them about my situation, and they took that on board, and if I wasn't there in a lesson, then they would send me the catch-up work, which was really nice, because it helped me just keep organized and on top of everything when I wasn't able to be in the lesson. I think just having that support network is really good, because no one can underestimate how difficult it is to transition back into education after an illness. So having that support network makes it so much easier. Make sure that you have some really good friends around you who are perhaps in your lessons, that they can help you out, and don't hesitate to ask the teacher if you need help on something. You know, if you need some one-on-one support, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to do that. My third piece of advice is do not put too much pressure on yourself. I was definitely someone who did this. I went back into year 10, you know, just trying to work my butt off to prove to everyone that even though I have cancer, I can still get amazing grades. And I did get really good grades, but in a way I did sacrifice my health for that. I was losing weight, I was getting really tired. Don't do that. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Your health always comes first. So even if you do have high expectations for yourself, you really do want to succeed in education, you can do so. But you must remember that your health comes first. Make sure to look after yourself. That's something that I certainly didn't do in the first few months of, I guess, my new year 10. I was so determined to, you know, try and get those good grades. I really did sacrifice my health a little bit, so make sure that, you know, if you need to take some breaks, I had to end up taking days off school. Make sure you do eat well, always prioritize that, always prioritize your sleep over the work. You know, the work can wait, and, you know, ask for adjustments as well. At school, if I needed to, then I got an extended homework deadline and things like that. I find that is really useful, and with certain tests I also got extra time on tests, because my chemo brain meant that I found it very hard to focus for long periods of time, so being able to have those breaks and that extra time on tests really helped me as well. And I think it's just accepting your new normal, and also kind of not lowering your expectations, but making them more realistic. Before I had cancer, I was like, I'm gonna get all A stars in my GCSEs, but then I had to kind of think to myself, you know what, I've been through cancer, I've missed so much school, I've got all these memory and concentration problems. all those A stars are just not realistic now. It doesn't mean that I'm kind of lowering my standards. It just means I have to work within my capabilities, not against them. So, you just have to be proud of yourself and kind of be happy with what you can achieve, not what you could have achieved before you had an illness, if that makes sense. My next piece of advice is to focus on you and not compare yourself to other peers in the class. I think this is really important because I did this a lot. I thought, oh, why is he getting better scores than me? I want to get the best score in the class because, I'm just naturally competitive like that. But I kind of, thought to myself, what am I doing wrong? Am I not revising hard enough? I need to revise harder. I need to do this and that. But I kind of neglected the fact that they were not going through chemotherapy, but I was. So I was quite hard on myself in that respect. I thought, you know what, I need to get these amazing grades, but I was kind of forgetting the fact that because I was going through chemotherapy, I was tired, I couldn't concentrate properly, I had a terrible memory. So just be patient with yourself is the biggest piece of advice I could ever give you. Because if you keep constantly pushing yourself, trying to, be as good as your peers who aren't ill, then it's just it's not impossible, but it's just an uphill struggle because they are of course at an advantage to you because they are perfectly well, presumably, and don't have to go through chemotherapy. So don't be hard on yourself, just be happy with what you've achieved. If you think this grade, you've worked hard for this grade and you feel like you did all that you could, then be happy. Don't constantly compare yourself with your peers. So my last piece of advice is about how to keep yourself motivated, because we all know that when you're going through an illness, you will have days where you just want to lie in bed all day and you just don't want to do any schoolwork, and that's completely okay. I think the first priority is always listen to your body. If you are feeling exhausted, do take a rest day, don't overexert yourself. But if you can, do try and motivate yourself to do the work. I kind of developed a very high level of self-discipline when I was going back into education because I knew I had a lot to catch up on. I knew that I wasn't able to absorb the information as well as my peers, so on certain things I'd have to spend more time on them. So I kind of set up like a routine. I made sure that I kind of went to school either in the morning or afternoon, I had a break, and then in the evening I did a couple hours of work. So I tried sticking to that as religiously as I could, and then I made sure that on weekends I always did a few hours of work on each day. I think it just really helped me to like spread it out a bit, because some people just take the whole weekend off, which is fine, but I knew that I was limited with my time because I couldn't work for as hard or as long as my peers in the week. So I had to make sure I gave myself that extra time on the weekend to do the work, to do the homework. So I think it's just being really clever with your time whilst making sure that you have time to rest, to eat, and really look after yourself and your health. So I really hope this video helped you. I know how difficult it is to get back into education after an illness. It is super daunting, and just facing all these new challenges, having to deal with fatigue, brain fog, unable to memorize anything to save my life. It is really, really difficult, but honestly, you can do it. Just keep motivated, keep disciplined, and just remember to listen to your body, because your health is the #1 priority. So if you have any advice, please do put them in the comments down below, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.